Hi guys, this is a special edition of Understand TAE's question of the week, and this is our ASQA provider overview, and we are going to be talking specifically about ASQA, the issues that they've identified in and around third-party delivery trends. So there was quite a bit of time that was actually spent focusing on this in relation to the non-compliances that ASQA has identified and how those issues are being addressed and what RTOs are not doing in relation to third parties. So I want to go over that today with you guys. Basically, with third parties, it's really straightforward. Anything a third party does on your behalf, you are responsible for. So some of the areas that ASQA has they went through a couple of different points. They went through some of their observations in the trends that they were noticing in relation to issues that they were concerned about. And then they talked about things along the lines of what they expected to see and what they were hoping to see in relation to best practice. So some of the observations that they talked about were things like not informing the regulator of agreements. So you've got 30 days commencement and 30 days from cessation to notify ASQA of a third-party agreement. There was generally seen to be a lack of understanding as to what a third-party agreement entails. Specifically, as I said, you've got to put in there the fact that the RTO is ultimately responsible for managing compliance against the standards, and that just because you've ended an agreement, that actually doesn't negate your responsibility to go in and potentially rectify. So to give you guys an example of that, let's say that you had somebody who was delivering training and assessing on your behalf. They didn't train and assess to the standard that was required. You've issued the qualification, you've gone back through your validation process, identified that there was an issue, you've terminated the agreement with a third party. That doesn't negate you from having to go back and rectify with the learners. So it's really important that ultimately the learners of the third party are your learners, and at the end of the day, when you issue that qualification, you've got to make sure that you as the RTO have got all of the evidence. This led on to the fact that there are still RTOs that are running third-party arrangements where there is no written agreement. So you must have a written agreement that is built in with the standards, and that written agreement needs to outline the responsibilities of all of the parties, okay? There is a couple of templates that I know that you can purchase out there. Velga's got a template. RTO Doctor has got a template for third parties, and there's a couple of other really good. Vet Prep is another one that's got kind of like a little package that they put together, so you can check out any of those ones there, and I'm sure that they have a product that they can provide to you as a starting point. In relation to some of the other ones, agreements didn't state that there was a need for the third party to comply with the standards for RTOs. If someone's going to be training and assessing on your behalf, they should have a full understanding of that responsibility. And another major area was that the providers are not following through with their monitoring processes. So you guys have got to have a process in place to monitor those providers, to train those providers. I strongly recommend that there is generally an induction program. So you might have like a third-party handbook that you provide depending on what you're doing. How are you monitoring that? So if you're monitoring, for example, agents, you will conduct random interviews with students to make sure that the information that they got prior to enrolling with yourselves was correct. Did the agent promise anything that they are not allowed to promise in relation to the services that they were going to provide in relation to the fees? If you're looking at monitoring your third parties from a training and assessment point of view, that should come up through your validation processes. I would also recommend that with new third-party subcontracting arrangements where you're subcontracting the training and assessing, that you are actually doing some moderation on that as well. So by moderation, what I mean is that you're looking at it beforehand, before you actually issue that determination of competency. You're reviewing the evidence, making sure that all of the evidence is there before you issue that unit as competent. Okay, have another trainer look over it, make sure that everything's up to date, make sure that your templates have been used, all of that sort of thing. So another key area that ASQA wanted to follow through on this one, and sorry, I'm just pulling up the right slide. So lack of oversight was kind of a common area. As I said, that goes back to that monitoring component. all files and records not kept with the RTO. Now, this is generally not common so much with third party, like where you're subcontracting out to a company for an enterprise agreement, but it is very common with RTOs that are working with schools. Okay, so quite often RTOs will work with schools to deliver things like vet in school programs. In these circumstances, we might find that the records are kept at the school. That's not acceptable. You guys as the RTO are responsible. You're the ones that get audited for the evidence. You are the ones that absolutely must ensure that your records are at the school. And when I say the records as well, I also mean that the trainer and assessor records. That's a really common one where, you know, your trainer and assessor documentation for your third party, for like the vet and schools trainers or for enterprise trainers, are kept out on site. You guys need to go through exactly the same process. You should be keeping them with all of your other ones. They might be kept under a separate category of contractor or third party contractor, trainers and assessors, but they still definitely need to be in there. Ensuring that things like all of the AVET MIS details stay up to date. So again, you know, if they're your students, managing their progression is your responsibility. You need to make sure that, you know, at any point in time, that information and data is up to date. So, you know, are you doing monthly communications? Are you doing weekly? Are you doing fortnightly? Are you doing, you know, you might only be doing quarterly. You know, it just depends on the volume of students that you're putting through, obviously. But you need to be making sure that on a regular basis, I would recommend no more than monthly as an ideal. That you're getting that information, making sure that all of the information is up to date and making sure that your students are receiving all of the services that they're supposed to be. So that was kind of what ASQA was looking for in relationship to best practice, regular monitoring. So one of the things that they did say was, you know, if you've got agreements that kind of, you know, are ebbing and flowing, that should be included in there as well. One area that I am actually seeking clarification from ASQA on, so we confirmed it verbally and I'm now waiting for a written confirmation, is that host employer agreement. So for most of you, if you've got a host employer industry placement arrangement with childcare centres or restaurants for hospitality, any of those sorts of things, if you're including them in your amount of training, under discussions that we've had with ASQA, they are classifying them as a third party because they are delivering part of the training service. So I am, as I said, I'm seeking formal confirmation on this component because I know it has quite an impact on a lot of the providers that I work with. But if that comes back to me, we will make a post about that potentially your host employer arrangements, you absolutely should have an agreement with all of your host employers anyway, but that may also need to be reported through to the regulator. Once I get the written confirmation of that, I'll make sure that we update this link and that we put a post out for providers to know that as well. So we've covered third parties today. Looks like this is going to be a 3 or 4 part series. So I hope you've enjoyed it and, you know, happy compliance monitoring. See ya. Bye.